Well, in 1964, Aziz Pahad was banned by the apartheid government and went into exile following the Rivonia Trial. He played a major role in developing the Anti-Apartheid Movement in the UK and in Europe at large. He served as Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa from 1994 to 2008. In July 2014, Pahad was appointed by President Jacob Zuma as a presidential envoy to deal with the Middle East crisis. In his recently published memoirs, Pahad recounts his early years in South Africa, which informed his political ideology as well as his time in exile in London. He also gives insights into the leadership of inspirational figures. Aziz Pahad is in studio with us now to tell us more about the book. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you as well.
Morning.
It's a great achievement to be able to pen your memoirs and to be able to do this, especially seeing you're such a busy man.
Well, you know, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of our democracy, and it's the 130th anniversary of the ANC. And I thought that too many people who had participated in the struggle have not written about it.
Yeah.
And the struggle has been written by others, and inevitably there would be distortions or different assessments. So I thought that I'll start the process, join others in writing about that whole period.
Yeah.
How do you become an activist? Why do you're not born an activist. Why are you molded into becoming an activist? And the role of leadership, important role of leadership.
Well, let's talk about that, but let's go back to the beginning. And obviously your parents, Amina and Gulham Pahad, they must have had a major influence on you. I mean, because it wasn't only you, it was your brother Isa Pahad as well. So tell us about your upbringing and what shaped you to want to change.
Well, first of all, my dad was a member of the South African Indian Congress, executive member in the Transvaal Indian Congress. And my mum participated in the passive resistance campaign, went to jail in Durban, and then defiance campaign, she went to jail. And our house was in a very exciting area. The Mandela Tambo offices were there, the ANC offices were in our vicinity, the Indian Congress offices. So we were interacting with the leadership when we were children, not fully appreciating the importance of people like Mandela, Sisulu, Katrada, Tumanokwe. And so, but we grew up in many ways just under their shadow. So everything we were learning unconsciously or at times consciously from these leaders. And we began to understand the dynamics of the South African situation from a very early age. I won't say we fully appreciate it, but we began to get a grasp of what the leaders were fighting about.
Yeah. I mean, the book really does go into detail about your early life, your political life. Did you kind of, along the way, what really stood out for you? I mean, there must have been people that really influenced you along that route.
Well, I think the greatest influences would have come from the leadership of the ANC and indeed of the Indian Congress. As I say, on almost a daily basis, I was interacting with leaders such as Mandela, Sisulu, Katrada, my dad and others. And our flat was a center of a lot of the activities. Yeah. So when the defiance campaign was being planned, assessed, at one time or another, they were in the flat discussing. So I got a sense of the defiance campaign. I was very young, 12 years old, but we had to go distributing leaflets, writing slogans on the wall, putting up posters. As I say, it was like an adventure at that stage.
Yeah.
But we had to do it because that was part of the instructions from the youth section. And Defiance Campaign, the Freedom Charter was another historic moment, which I was only 15 when the Freedom Charter was adopted in Kliptown. So again, it was exciting periods like that. And the courthouse was in the street I grew up. So all the trials that took place of the ANC Indian Congress leaders were taking place at that magistrate's court. And so our primary school was just opposite.
Yeah.
And so every time the trial adjourned, there were massive demonstrations. And so we used to leave the school and join the demonstrations as they marched to the station, because at the time, you know, Africans couldn't be in town after a certain hour. So we marched to Park Station, and then most of them left for the townships, and we returned back to our own little Indian area.
Yeah.
So it was in that sort of process that I learnt a lot about the non-racialism of the ANC in concrete action.
Yeah.
I read the policies, but in concrete action.
Yeah, you lived the policies of the ANC.
All groups participated, were being charged together, were marching together. And so it was a very, very, I say, a privileged upbringing I had.
Yeah. Now, besides your upbringing, you actually had 48 secret meetings with our former President Nelson Mandela while he was in prison. Now, these must have been essential, and I mean, to keep something like that to yourself and not talk about what was going on in those meetings must have been very, very difficult for you. What was going on in those meetings?
I was involved in more of the secret meetings in the UK and Switzerland. Mandela was talking to, he was on his own, especially when he was in Paulso, was talking to a group of 5 led by Kubikutse.
Yeah.
And that was a purely government delegation talking to him, while we were talking to a delegation in very luxurious surroundings outside of London.
Yeah.
We've had 8 of those meetings, and then we had 3 meetings with the then National Intelligence Agency in Switzerland. And it was a very exciting moment, because we were learning what each other's fears were, what each other's aspirations were. We were learning what the bottom lines are at each other's positions, which eventually were the same issues that were generally discussed in CODESA 1 and 2. But we were also discussing the importance of the release of Mandela, Sisulu, and other political prisoners, the unbanning of organizations, the lifting of the state. So we had detailed discussion at every meeting about the processes that must lead to that situation. We did not know that initially that Mandela was having secret meetings in prison. And it is a fascinating exercise, I think, to try to understand how is it that Mandela has been in prison for so long, in isolation. He's talking to a committee of 5. We are talking to people who are reporting back to them. But how did the two maintain, broadly speaking, the same positions about negotiated with? And that, I think, is a remarkable indication of how the ANC was driven by policies that we all had to follow.
Yeah, and it just showed the commitment and the path that you were all taking. So from your early years until today, and unfortunately I've got to wrap this interview, but from when you, my goodness me, I mean, since your first memories, you've been doing this. And now it hasn't ended, because you've got this massive responsibility of being the envoy for the Middle East crisis. I mean, that, again, must be a lot of pressure for you.
Yes, I and Minister Solas Kuia are the envoys. And it is, again, a challenge in a very complex area. And we hope we can share our experiences of finding a negotiated solution with the Palestinians and Israelis. We cannot impose a South African solution, but we can share our experiences of how 2 enemies found each other and decided that we as South Africans will solve our own problems without outside interference.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for talking to us. The book to be officially launched next week, you were saying?
On Constitutional Hill on the 21st.
And then it'll be around bookstores around the country. The foreword is so eloquently written by our former President Thabo Mbeki. As you can imagine, he writes absolutely magnificently. And that's who's written the foreword for you, with a relationship that goes back more than 5 decades. Thank you for being with us, and congratulations.
Thank you,
a great achievement, it really is. So that's the book, Insurgent, Diplomat, Civil Talks or Civil War.